Good afternoon. This is Toilet Talk, part two of Toilet Talk with Dina Lynn. This is Dina Lynn, and I am Robin Wendert, her proud partner. And we left off a little bit earlier today with kind of a recount of what our relationship has been like over the last 8.5 years. And we got to about year 6.5, right after we'd broken up, essentially, for all intents and purposes, quote, divorced, unquote. Yes, I did the whole, text thing, text to voice, or voice to text thing. Sorry, it's a habit. Um, and I think we're ready to pick this up. We just got back from a run in beautiful Oregon weather for a change.
Finally,
Dina Lynn is all glistening.
I'm like, I bypassed glowing. I'm, I'm not just perspiring. I'm sweating. You got me like.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
She is
missing some of my sweat.
She is immersed in her own glisten.
I am sliding around on the toilet seat, y'all.
I don't think they needed to know that, but okay.
Everything is sweating. Yeah, I had to put the hair off the neck and everything.
Yeah, this is literally, we want to show you real life, and this is real life for us.
Life.
Yeah,
real
sweaty
life.
on a toilet,
Yeah, it's just be glad it's not smellophone, because I don't know if y'all can handle.
So we need to call this a call and sniff,
well,
a watch and sniff, as opposed to a scratch and sniff.
Olfactory offensiveness would be happening. So yeah, we went out for a run, and it was a good run. It was good. We were actually dancing in rhythm to music.
Yeah, so this is a plug for Steve Boyette, who produces Podrunner music for walking and running. He has amazing programs. I love his music. His house beats and his mixes, they range anywhere from half an hour to an hour and a half, and they are the perfect thing if you're just starting to walk, or you're just starting to run, or you want to get better at running, or you want to train yourself for a half marathon or whatever. This stuff will get you going and keep you going. So Podrunner, it's called Podrunner, podrunner.com, Steve Boyette,
Okay.
check it out.
We have got to get him as one of our sponsors, along with Sweaty Potty, because so
Anyway, sorry.
We did go do this thing. We did this run, and felt good. It was one of those runs where it felt good to be running while running versus it's good when you stop. Yeah, and now we're all warm because it's finally getting warm in Oregon. All right, so back to the chronology here of our relationship. We left it off with, we had broken up over seeming irreconcilable differences. I was pursuing what I thought was a compatible relationship that I had been looking for, and Robin was living in a small, for all intents and purposes, rustic tiny home, and I was back here. I had moved back here, and we weren't really speaking much, although every so often we had to connect. And I recall one day I had gone back to his place. He's in one town, I'm in another. I'd gone back to his place to either get something or deliver something, I can't recall now, but he mentioned to me, he said, there's this book you might like. It's called Existential Kink. And my ears kind of perked up at both things, both the existential word and the kink word, And
this was about 6 months after after we'd broken up, and
just
a couple months.
It was maybe October. It was before it was too cold. We were outside talking.
Well, right, but after we'd broken up, but not yet.
We had not yet begun to work through the issues we had left behind us. Another plug, something that we did as we were exiting the relationship, was called Conscious Uncoupling by Kathleen Woodward Thomas. And for anyone who's going through a difficulty, either you're about to break up, you are in the throes of breaking up, marriage or long-term relationship, or you can't quite get over a breakup in your past. It's an excellent book, the audiobook, the paperback, and there are also some PDFs. If you look up Conscious Uncoupling PDF, you will find a long resource with a bunch of links in it to exercises you can do. And it's all about reclaiming yourself, finding out why did the relationship fail? What do you need to learn from it? What are your takeaways? and how to both recognize what the other person did and see that, and what you did and own that, and then to accept and forgive and release and move on, so that it's a healthy thing rather than something where a part of you is stuck. Because that'll go into your future relationships with you if you don't do such a thing.
Right, and one of the things I'd like to mention is throughout, what you're hearing about us, what you may or may not end up discovering, but I'm going to point out now, is that this is cyclical. This isn't work that we did once and then got over it. This is work that we continue to do, starting at the inception. Well, not starting at the inception of our relationship, but we started more consciously doing it with the inception of our relationship, and then came back again and again and again and again to these same kinds of concepts that are very very common throughout multiple practices. And whether it's the conscious uncoupling by Catherine Woodward Thomas, or existential kink, or nonviolent communication,
or the Four Agreements,
or the Fifth Agreement, which goes along with those, or the Gottman work, or any of this stuff,
or Jungian therapy,
anything, any of this stuff where we bite off, where we make a commitment to do our work so that we can better both live our lives as well as assist others in living theirs. This stuff takes practice, and it takes doing it over and over and over again. And the first time you do it, you're going to engage on a shallower level. And that doesn't mean that you're failing, because when we started doing the conscious uncoupling work with Catherine Woodward Thomas, I hadn't been able to come clean about having cheated yet. That wasn't something I could face. So that was
the first pass was on a certain level.
The first pass was on a certain level, and we keep on. Once we can deal with those first levels, once we can handle the stuff that's not quite as deep or dangerous, and we learn to be there with that, and we reconcile that, then we're ready to bite off deeper work. And that is a continual process. And that's kind of what we're describing to you in these videos, is the process by which we went from one level through the dark night of the soul to another level. Interesting phrase, dark night of the soul, shadow work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and then
I've got two analogies that I want to share about
Go ahead.
Okay. So when Robin mentioned how it's cyclical, we often have in our mind, in Western mindsets, worldview,
Western vernaculars.
We tend to think of life linearly. You go down the timeline from your perspective. You go down the timeline.
Right to left, left to right, up to down, down to up, whatever.
Just whatever. Body dyslexia. We're born, we go through, we die. So we think of it as a linear thing. And if we find ourselves revisiting something, we're going along, and then it's like, oh, am I going backwards because I'm back at that thing? Wrong model. What it actually is a spiral, but a spiral that goes upward. So if you do right here and you come around and you revisit this thing, but you're at a higher level at which you can paradoxically go deeper on that thing. You haven't gone backwards. You just came back around again, full circle, and you're able to see this thing on a different level. Much like, I'm not a gamer, Robin's a gamer, but what I understand about gaming is when you level up, you've got all of the same tools, sometimes extra tools at your disposal, and you're dealing with the same kind of an obstacle, a challenge, but you're not starting over again, but you're going through the same thing on a different level because you're stronger. You've raised up in skills and ability. So when you revisit a thing, say yay. Be glad that you're revisiting a thing because you've grown. This is evidence of growing.
Right. And we can also spiral into unhealthy habits too. So we can catastrophize. We can immerse ourselves in shame or blame. So we're seeing the same issue, but at that point through a narrower lens that is more likely to immerse us in the unhealthy state of wallowing in that pain and that suffering, which again is a necessary thing. We have to discover those spots so that we can open them up, explore them, and integrate them. So anyway.
So every bit of it is valid and required, though at the time it can feel like we're stagnating, we're going backwards, whatever. If it's happening, it needs to happen.
Right.
And that's how we know what we need is whatever we're receiving.
Right.
So Robin had mentioned this book to me, Existential Kink, and it was intriguing enough that I checked it out. And then I realized right before the pandemic, so actually on Valentine's Day, I had watched the videos put out by the author of the book, Carolyn Elliott. She was introducing the book to the world at large, and then the pandemic hit. So months later, she was putting out a lot of free information because she recognized that we, humanity, were collectively having our everything shaken and stirred, and the shadow was coming up, and this was her tool for her gift to the world. So I listened to the book 3 times on audio, and it absolutely, it's okay, it looks like I'm moving all over the place. It hit me on such a deep level. I have been a lover of the shadow for as long as, well, since childhood. But I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know the tools. It was this nebulous, just go deep and deal with stuff, and like, okay, and I start how? And so this book was a very practical, approach to a Jungian esoteric idea of we have the shadow, our subconscious, which comprises 95% of us. So 5% is the conscious mind, and that's where we typically live, the rational, reasonable, practical, logical part of our mind, where the ego lives. But we also have the shadow, and we came here for the full throttle human experience, not just the positive things that the ego wants, but also the negative. And notice, these are not about value. It's not positive, good, yay, negative, bad. It's we need both. Think of the yin yang symbol. So I began doing intentional shadow work with existential kink, and Robin had the book on his end too. And we were doing this for ourselves. Instead of those years where it was all about, oh, we have to do this to save the relationship. Now the relationship had, as far as we knew, it was done, gone, over. So we weren't doing it for the relationship, we were doing it for ourselves.
Right.
Which is an entirely different level of engagement. And speaking of engagement, when we each intended on our own to engage with shadow work, it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter whether we're consciously doing the work or not. It engages with us.
Yeah.
We learned this when we did the shamanic work around the medicine wheel. The medicine wheel will begin to have its way with us before we actually sit down and consciously begin the process.
Right. It's one of the stories that we tell, and we got told by our guide. At one point, there was a shaman doing a ceremony with a person. It was an illumination, and one of the people, after the illumination was done, one of the people asked.
Hold on.
Oh.
I want to set the stage a little bit to give you a visual.
Sorry.
So the shaman was blowing smoke and shaking rattles and doing all of these fabulously intriguing things over the person, chanting and dancing around and laying hands on, and just lots of stuff was happening to this person receiving. So
it was, well, it's an amazing thing to watch, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, they're using the power of smoke to draw out the bad spirits and the bad juju and the bad energy, and they're taking this bad energy and they're giving it back to Mother Earth to be digested and made into life anew, and all of these things. And as an onlooker, it's this incredible experience of
ritual,
of watching and engaging energetically in this ritual that is being guided and produced by this medicine person, by this Paco, by this shaman, by this spiritual leader. And so, this person asks, it's like, well, when exactly does the healing happen?
At what point?
At what point does the healing happen in the ceremony? And what did he say, do you know, Lynn? Or what did he, she, they say?
Yeah, I don't recall whether what earth suit the shaman was in, but the shaman said, it happened at the moment I set the intention, but you people always want to show. And the perfect, ridiculous notion of that it's all smoke and mirrors. The intention is when the engagement actually happens. And it was the same for us in setting the intention of, for me, the conscious thought was, I just had a significant, almost decade-long relationship, and I'm gonna make it count. I'm not gonna be stuck here. I'm gonna grow from this. I'm gonna face whatever I have to face because I never want to repeat unresolved conflict.
Oh, fuck.
Ever again.
We're going to repeat some unresolved conflict because she's like saying, I never want to resolve, I never want to deal with unresolved conflict again. So there's a trigger in there. So stay tuned because at some point in the future, we will probably be experiencing some unresolved conflict.
Oh, because I just invited the universe to
Yes.
Well, we know we're not done. We know we're not done. We're in this for all of the
anyway,
soul reasons.
Yes.
Yeah. So here we each were doing our work. I didn't know what he was doing. I mean, our communication at this level was strained. There was anger. My anger was like, he did this thing to me. He cheated on me, and I was just.
And this anger and resentment and what I did was causing her health problems at the same time too. She was suffering.
Oh yeah, I was definitely suffering. I had an infection in my ovaries that took a lot of investigation. I was dealing with vertigo. Bulimia would come up again as an escape hatch. It was just a lot of unhealth, and so I had impetus. I had incentive to continue to do the work because I didn't want to be stuck in this place. I didn't want to remain angry at him. I needed this resolved. I knew in my mind then, if I'm going into this new relationship, I don't want to drag stuff with me and contaminate it. So the work was about me going into my future. And we met a few times he came here to meet me, mostly because I was in complete isolation and feeling, you know, when Jack Nicholas starts to go wonky in The Shining and he's seeing dead people and you see him losing touch with sanity, I was feeling kind of like that, like, wait, this is what it's like when a person starts to lose their mind from the intense isolation and disconnection with really anybody locally. Pandemic was happening, all of that. I wasn't working. Each day stretched out in front of me with really nothing to do. And every so often, we would either talk or I would reach out to him because I didn't have anyone else locally with whom to do this. And he knew my story, my history.
And you were struggling with an uncertainty brought on by a lot of back and forthing in this
the relationship,
this online relationship thing.
Things like visits would be planned and then he's not coming, and yet it wasn't letting go. And the journaling that I did, writing out long things about what I really wanted to experience in a relationship and imagining it was this guy, but I didn't yet know what was going on. Did you want to talk about what you were going through during this time?
Well, so yeah, I too had engaged in the existential kink booklet some. I was exploring some other stuff, talking with several women, trying to decide what it was I needed to do to explore polyamory in this time, and I wasn't ready for much. I didn't want to engage except on a really basic level with anything potentially romantic or intimate or otherwise. The bulk of my work really started coming down to examining what I was feeling about myself, about what it felt like to be engaging with other people, and what I didn't want to repeat that was difficult for me when I was with Dina, which was trying to actually explore, understand, and establish boundaries. And at the time, I didn't know the difference between a boundary and a rule. I kind of conceptually got it, but trying to actually explain the difference between what a boundary is and what a rule is or wasn't something that I could do. So that was really the bulk of my experience during that time. It's like, okay, what are my boundaries? What do I want? That was the question I started asking myself every time I found myself doing almost anything. So, okay, what do I want? Do I want to go out on a date? Yes, no. If so, why? Is it as simple as like wanting to go out and visit somebody, or is it more than that? Am I wanting to feel validated? Have I validated myself? So my exploration was about asking myself what I want, and then asking myself the question, why do I want this? Do I want a relationship, intimate sexual relationship with multiple women, potentially, men, whatever, um, or was that a product of some kind of ambition of my shadow that I had no idea really what it was pointing towards about the needs that I had that I wasn't acknowledging? Um, so boundaries, wants, and needs, those were like my starting points right there. And I'm sure there's much more to that. At the moment, I'm not thinking of it. And so
Well,
this back and forth thing.
I remember one part that you would share with me throughout our years together. So those years in between our first breakup and the proposal, when the question was, does he want just me? Does he want other women too? And why? And what you kept coming up against was this question of, is this how I'm wired? Or am I compensating for a
Right.
need I don't yet know? And so that it sounds to me like it sounded then in the year we were apart. It sounds like you didn't want to preemptively take action until you were more sure about what you were really motivated by.
Right.
Because you're messing with people's hearts and lives.
And my own, yeah.
And your own.
But the effect on other people, which is ironically, when I'm thinking about that first, that's
people pleasing.
People pleasing, yes.
Yeah. But and eventually we come full circle, we spiral up again to realize that when we care about others, when we have a healthy sense of self, when we care about others, it's also because we care about us, because there is no real disconnection.
Right.
What we do for another benefits us as well. We go from codependent to interdependent after experiencing independence.
Right.
That can't bypass that part. And we couldn't bypass any of these parts.
Right.
We really couldn't. We didn't know what was happening then.
This was going to happen to us. This was happening for us, and we hated it in the middle of it.
Oh, it was awful.
It was awful. It was awful to come to the point where you are so angry at somebody that you actually love, that you don't want to see them and don't want to speak to them. That's pretty intense.
Yeah, but hate is not the opposite of love. It's love in pain. And
I didn't say hate, I don't think.
You did.
Did I?
Mm-hmm. And it's okay, because
Okay.
that feeling of hatred is not, indifference would be the opposite of love, not caring at all.
Right.
We cared. And it was painful to have this separation. So one day, I don't even remember now what set it up, but we knew we had to talk. We had to do business with this, and I had done enough of my own shadow work and the conscious uncoupling that I could see, okay, this wasn't just a story of Robin had emotional and sexual infidelities, he cheated on me, he did me wrong, I was the innocent party over here. I had to start facing, all right, this was a two-way street. We each contributed, and it doesn't matter percentage. There's no way to determine that. It was, I had to own what I had done, my part. And there was a lot to look at. There were, I had judgments, I had assumptions, I had expectations for what a husband should look and act like that was largely based upon my parents' marriage, how I was raised within Christianity, my first marriage, without taking into consideration that Robin's perspective being different was just different, not wrong or bad. So that was part of what I had to look at. I had to look at the way in which I had pulled back from him in my own pain about feeling he pulled back from me. It was weird how we did this codependent thing together. And in that state of independence from each other, where the stakes were no longer about rescuing, saving, keeping, protecting the relationship. I was able to look at it more objectively. I don't remember who said to whom, let's get together and talk, but we were both ready to. That was around Thanksgiving of 2020. And I was able to hear him without waiting for my chance to speak, that kind of not hearing really, not listening. And I was able to feel the pain that he went through then and the sense of isolation he experienced at the time that he was physically unfaithful, what he was looking for, how he regretted it. There was a lot more than I had allowed myself to see and feel. We worked through to forgiveness on that level. And what do you remember about that time? Is there more to add
The timeline stuff is difficult to really pinpoint.
That's right. If nothing comes up, it's okay.
I remember the conversations that we had, and I remember for the first time at this point where, it was probably November, October, somewhere right in there, and for the first time, actually feeling like the agenda wasn't to be proven wrong or to be held responsible for how Dina was feeling or how I had affected her or for the pain that she was in or for being blamed for something that was manifesting in her body. But rather for her taking actual ownership of how her own habits were causing the pain and suffering in her body.
And how my pain, I had recently realized in doing shadow work that my capacity for feeling my feelings, which can be a gift and a curse, when it's on the unhealthy curse level, when I'm in intense emotional pain, it eclipses the pain of everyone else around me, no matter how much I love them. It happened with my children. It's happened with partners. It happened with Robin. And I had to see that. I had to see that my emotions were my business, my doing, and something for me to feel, not for me to blame another for making me feel them. Right. And it's weird because if I don't own them and feel them as mine, they'll show up in my body as anxiety, as depression, as a physical manifestation. So it's important to feel those feelings.
Right. And so, she was able to express this realization that, for the first time she understood that she could see that when she was in these deep emotional places of turmoil or deep places of emotional turmoil, she wasn't aware of anything else going on around her. She wasn't aware of my feelings, of what I was trying to say, of what I needed to say, of what I was trying to communicate. And for the first time, in that moment, I felt like finally there was an opening to have an actual dialogue about not feeling heard for like almost the entire length of our relationship from that moment going back. So, 7 years, 6.5 years worth of feeling like I'm doing my best to communicate authentically, genuinely, with taking responsibility and accountability for my own emotions and what I'm doing. And finally, it was like, I felt crazy.
We both did.
We both felt crazy. Yeah. We both felt gaslit.
Oh, yeah.
And in that moment, there was a stark realization for the both of us. It was like this major aha moment between the two of us, where it was like, okay, yeah, we've both done a lot of harm.
It's interesting. We both kind of had realizations near the same time. Mine of how my emotional turmoil can eclipse that of another, and yours with people pleasing. So these two worked together, but they danced dysfunctionally, sustainably. We could perpetuate this unhealthy dynamic. And this was our way of owning it. And it's the funny thing about the shadow is once you make the unconscious conscious, and see it and own it and recognize it for what it is, not this evil thing you have to obliterate, but this thing that intended something for you. It intended, each of these things happening in us was a way of compensating as children when we couldn't handle what was going on that was so painful, and it was our way of coping and surviving something that was too much. And now it's biting us in the ass. It's getting in the way of relating, and it takes the relationship, the intimate relationship, to bring up this stuff so we can look at it. But when it's happening, it feels like, oh my God, this isn't working, let me out of here. And so many times people run at the first sign of conflict into another relationship, and this just gets perpetuated, until shit hits the fan again, and then exit. And you keep thinking this new shiny person is going to fix everything, but you bring you to it. So the work has to be in here. And that's what we were each doing. And that's what was showing up. Even though we were still separated relationally, we were at least now speaking. So he would come over every few weeks. It wasn't terribly regular. In fact, I would sometimes tell him not to come over, because I started realizing something after we had this breakthrough and the walls softened. When I found myself crying, supposedly, because this fabricated fantasy man kept not showing up and pulling away.
Mr. S.
Mr. S. Why not? When Mr. S would pull away, and I would feel this, grief, I would find myself dreaming and thinking about Robin when I wasn't supposed to. He just kept coming up, and I would feel this ache for him. And it's like, oh God, this is awful if I'm stuck loving this man who can't give me what I want, and he wants all these other relationships, and we'll never be compatible, and oh my God, what if I'm trapped in this and no one else will ever do it for me, all of that. So I kept...
This doesn't sound codependent at all.
Not at all. Not at all. So I kept throwing myself into this relationship with Mr. S. And then eventually, the time came when I was able to meet that man face to face. Flew to meet him. And the fantasy bubble was popped at first impression. I tried to make it work. But it was 11 days of realizing more and more and more that I had been trying to replace Robin, and that he was irreplaceable. And it was awful to face. And I remembered messaging with Robin a few times and saying, there's some things I would like to talk about when I get back, because I wanted to resolve this. I couldn't be stuck pining for a man with whom I couldn't have what I wanted with him. It was too painful. And I realized that this attempt with Mr. S was a fantasy, a fallacy, a fabrication, not real. And it was a very painful thing. Also, my longest ever friend was dying during this time. My friend Susan unexpectedly had a heart attack, went to a coma, and was dying while I was away. She passed on the day I returned back here to Oregon. And when I landed, the first person I wanted to talk to was Robin. So I got in my car from the airport, an hour-and-a-half drive, and we talked. And it was March of 2021. I was noticing all of the spring that had happened in my absence. The blossoms were starting to come out, the leaves were budding, and there just felt like this feeling of potential. And I didn't know for what. Because Robin and I had broken up. We were incompatible. All that had been established, right? And I got home and I had a breakup meeting with Mr. S, a Zoom call. And he let it be absolutely clear this was over. And I cried for about 10-ish minutes, and then I went, why am I grieving this? I don't want this. And I let Robin know that what had happened, and he asked, do you want me to listen on the phone? Do you want to just pour your heart out here in text? Do you want me to come over? And I wanted him to come over.
And there was something interesting that happened. Several things along these lines. The first one was, as she was going down to meet Mr. S, planning to go down to meet Mr. S, and several other times that she was having meetings or potential meetings with other people while we were not in a relationship, I was concerned about her. I didn't want her to jump from our relationship into something else, but at the same time, well, I didn't want her to do that and not have learned anything. I wanted her relationship, whatever or whomever, whatever it looked like or whomever it was with, to be healthy, what she was looking for. But I was concerned about her because I didn't know whether or not she had done the work that was going to give her what she wanted or
and
not.
I was flying off to meet a virtual stranger, so
but
I was concerned about my safety too.
I'm even thinking about, the time when, Robert was supposed to come by with the bed, it's like, and there was somebody else who was supposed to visit, that was like, just let me know that you're safe.
Right.
Anyway.
He was always concerned about my well-being, and that came through.
Yeah, always concerned about her well-being. So several conversations, text conversations, with her while she was gone on this trip to make this journey with Mr. S and everything else that they were doing together, which I was somewhat envious and jealous of. I was really envious and jealous of it.
That's the first time you said that.
Well, I mean, you doing these mastermind groups and different things. It's this.
We had plans.
Yeah,
like, they never panned out.
Yeah. Anyway, it felt like some of the dreams that I'd had to have with that I wanted to co-create with Dina. She was running with them with somebody else, and that was definitely difficult. There was a lot of sadness there, grief, remorse, regret, but in and along with all the text conversations she was having, I was just like, just let me know that you're okay. Just make sure that you let somebody know that you're safe. And at one point, she had mentioned to me, and I don't remember if it was actually a phone conversation or just a text conversation, but that she was really missing the energy, and what she discovered where she was at was that it wasn't genuine, and and she missed at least at the very least she missed the attempts that we made at genuine conversation and deep diving, even if we weren't doing it perfectly. So when she came back, I think there was about a was it almost a week?
No, it was just a few days.
It seemed like it seemed interminable.
That was Sunday, and Tuesday was that call, and we were over that night.
Okay, it seemed interminable.
There was been 10 months of separation. So Robin did come over to console me. Let's just say he's got some excellent consolation skills. So
they are not a consolation prize, however.
He can console well. He heard me out, and so before this,
going back.
I'm backtracking. On these times when we would get together, we would either we're both huggers, so there would be the hugging at the beginning and at the end of, and sometimes bodies remember. So when this man would hug me, there was years and years of memory and pheromones and everything going through me, and it would feel arousing. But I was supposedly in this other relationship that hadn't yet been met face to face. So I would feel guilty, and I had to keep these boundaries up. And there were times I would have to say to Robin, I'm feeling too vulnerable, don't come over.
Right.
I was concerned about what I would do, and then I would feel guilty. Then I would feel like I cheated on this other person with Robin, and this person kept mentioning that was one of his greatest fears. He apparently sensed something here even before I was conscious of it. But yeah, when I finished pouring out my heart and Robin listened to me, I wanted physical contact, and he asked if he could kiss me.
Stop.
No.
Stop for a minute. So I'm gonna pause right there before we get to the really good stuff. So, following up on the conversation from November, after she got back. So this is like 5 months later.
5 months after our breakup?
No, 4 or 5 months later after our conversation in November. Well, no. See, no, I guess it was like a year and 3 months.
It was 3 months. November 2020 is when we finally reconciled, and then March of 2021.
Okay, it just seemed like it was okay. Anyway, so the bottom line is this: so when we've been having more and more of these honest conversations, exploring more and more of the of where we contributed to each other's pain and difficulty and trauma and triggering and I can't remember if it was before we re-engaged the first time, that Tuesday after she got back from her trip, or whether it was on the phone or text.
Nobody's going to care the timeline here.
Anyway, it was either at that time of that conversation or shortly before, where she said, I finally understand what you mean by being able to be in love with more than one person at once.
Oh, yeah.
And she was talking about being in love with Mr. S, these feelings she had. And, I believe they were genuine feelings and genuine needs.
Feelings were feelings, they just didn't belong on that person.
Potentially. But for the time being, or for the sake of the example, for the sake of the level of appreciation I had for the comment, what she was able to see was how I could hold strong feelings for more than one person deeply and be conflicted by them as well. And that was, I think, the first time I really felt like, while she wanted me to explore who I was and discover what I needed in terms of style of relationship, monogamous, polyamorous, whatever, in that moment, I finally felt like she was able to understand one of the deep difficulties it's been for me to hold this alternative relationship style, and how difficult it can be, regardless of whether it's brought on by a need by a shadow self or whether it's genuine and healthy. Either way, it's one of those points in your life where, when you're really truly seen and heard, it's like this wash of, it's like a baptism. It's like being reborn. It's like having all of that energy just validated. It's like, I'm seen. I'm a real person now. Right. I'm a real person now. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's. I like the quote. I don't even know who said it originally, and I quote myself now because I've said it enough. That love is unconditional and relationships are not. And that capacity to be able to love more than one human being, I believe it's possible. And I don't want to relate it to, some people relate it to, I love all these foods,
mothers and fathers,
and I love all
foods,
these kids,
yeah.
and I love both your parents, because that diminishes something about what the people are going through in that equation. But yes, I can find within me that love, and even the memory, the essence of the in love with people that I've known in my past, while loving Robin and wanting to have this with him. It's there's capacity, and then there's, on some level, there's a choice about what to do with who we are and how we want to relate, what works best, what feels healthiest. There's all kinds of factors to consider. But at the time, when I came back, Robin had explored polyamory and was fairly committed to this path. And I was strongly still believe that I am monogamous, consciously monogamous, not, it's the default, but here's all my choices and this is what I want for a conscious, intentional, deep connection. and I only have so much time and energy to be able to do that. But the feelings, yeah, that I was able to understand how it's possible to have those feelings.
Yeah, it was the first time that you communicated. It was the first time that she communicated to me um, uh, the acknowledgement of how, I don't want to say easily, but how that kind of emotional dynamic could really be legitimate for somebody, for me. And that doesn't mean that that's where I wanted to be. There's at that particular moment in time when we got back there, when we met and reconnected, there's still a lot I didn't know. Oh, there's still a lot I didn't know. But regarding right. I mean, I knew that my journey was far from any destination. That I was in full blown journey, and that's a dynamic that's going to stick around in my life for a long time.
I was surprised when we got back together, and when it became clear that there was love and passion in the room between us, and we didn't have to do this, let's keep boundaries and make sure the hug doesn't last too long or things don't happen. It was okay. The power of the connection, the power of the bond between us, the power of the love, which didn't go away with the 10 months of going in opposite directions, was palpable. It was tangible. And I don't remember exactly now whether he asked if he could kiss me or I said I wanted him. You asked him. He's a gentleman. He asked if he could kiss me, like the first time he kissed me.
I think I made it a statement, though. I would like to kiss you.
I think so. And
I might have said, I would like to kiss you.
I gave consent.
Yes.
I offered consent, because consent is the new sex.
Consent was a very big thing for me at that point, too, because
sure.
that again is exploring the idea of consent is really important for a people pleaser, because you have to know what you want to consent to it.
Exactly.
And it's important to be able to ask for somebody's consent, because then you're not automatically trying to manipulate them through your own needs for them to answer in a way which you want.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So I gave my consent, and previously in our relationship up until the divorce breakup, consent was implied. I gave him consent on the onset. So whatever you would like to do regarding me and my earthsuit is fine. Consent offered, and don't do such a thing without a safe word you're not afraid to use and that the other will recognize. But yes, there had been implied, granted generalized consent, but this was a whole new thing. This was what are we to each other now, and where are we going? And this was, our subconscious parts were face to face on this love seat, and the love was right there. And so when he kissed me, it was like, despite the thousands of kisses we shared before, this was like a whole new kiss. There was the familiarity and the history, but there was the mystery and the excitement, and it was all consuming, and we ended up doing all the things that people do.
And then some.
And then some. And there was, for me, having grieved that I will never experience lovemaking with this man again. I will never feel the familiarity of his body again. And being able to have that again, and yet with this newness that was just, I don't even want to use the word intoxicating, because that's so minimal. It was huge. Falling in love again.
It felt like we were re-experiencing and re-exploring people we knew, but in a completely different way. It was like the people we knew, but not.
Yeah.
It was the people we knew.
Upgraded.
Yeah.
But familiar too. It was just glorious.
Right.
And we couldn't stop talking. We were both crying at times. We were laughing at times. We were just like looking into each other's eyes, and it was just this lovely, beautiful, all stuff that should be in movies. It was amazing, and here we were living it out loud. And in this time, in these first few days of being back together, I was terrified because my heart was re-engaging and I was vulnerable again. And all I knew at that point was, this is the man who I left because he told me he believed he was polyamorous. And for me, this was like the biggest risk of, at what moment is he going to tell me there's somebody else and then I have to choose? Do I stay in the dynamic or do I leave because of the pain of being in such a dynamic? And we very bravely discussed what would it be like to have a, what's sometimes called
This is not Hawaii.
That's not what we call it. Polymono or mono-poly dynamic, where one person is monogamous and the other is polyamorous. And I joined some groups and we talked about meeting with a therapist to really bravely, courageously explore this possibility. And I didn't know what I was capable of, and he didn't know what might actually happen. So I had to make a decision right then, right there with, do I shut it down now or do I stay open to this? And I remember we have noise out. Oh, careful, you're getting a little close to him. Don't want things to be shown that I don't want to reveal.
Oh, sorry.
And
I was trying to see if there was a
I
way
know
for me to
we
like-
have outdoor mowing, buzzing, leaf blowing things happening. I spoke to a friend who helped me to see. Hi, Eileen. She helped me to realize that the bravest thing I could do was to say yes to what was actually being offered, what was actually happening here now, rather than to make a decision about some future imagined fear and pain down the road. And just to keep saying yes, day by day. And there were days I would feel the anxiety of this, and I would just have to say, hi, anxiety, I guess you're my companion today. And all I know is I love this man right here, right now. I love what's happening with us. And I had to do the letting go and trusting that my soul, his soul, knew the way for whatever each of us needed to explore in this. I couldn't say no to this love that was happening between us, that was rejuvenated. I couldn't deny myself what was actually happening.
Right. And for me, something very similar. Here I was rediscovering somebody who, sorry, I'm doing weird things with my body and my posture and stuff while trying to do this. I was rediscovering this person that I loved very dearly, who had been able to show me something new that I hadn't seen before, a level of acceptance and vulnerability that we hadn't experienced for quite a while. I was being consciously vulnerable, taking huge risks with the deepest parts of my mind, my heart, my shadow, my traumas that I could discover at the time. And again, I'm going to reiterate, this is not a static thing. It's a process. It keeps on going on and on and on. And the level of discovery that I've been at since then has continued and will continue to go in that, but we're approaching an hour again for part 2. So there's obviously going to be a part 3 here soon.
Oh, God.
That I didn't want to hurt this person, but I couldn't not love her. I couldn't not be in a relationship with her. So what that really meant was I had to be as open and honest and genuine and authentic with everything that was going on inside me all at once, all the time. Because that was the only thing that was going to give her the opportunity to say, I can't do this anymore, or I want more, or I love what we're doing, or I don't like what we're doing, or this is hurting, or this is great, or any number of other things that would come along with it. Because if I wasn't able to be honest and authentic with what was going on in my mind, my body, my heart, my shadow, my fears, my excitements, then how on earth could she possibly know how to make a choice for herself about whether or not I was still worth it, or we were still worth it? And we knew we had a thing. And that was the only thing we knew. So when it came down to trying to define what we had, we discovered that in the truest tradition of Dr. Seuss, we were thing 1 and thing 2, because we had a thing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I mean, what do you call a person who is your former boyfriend times 2, ex-partner, previous husband, ex-husband. I mean, what do you...
Non-husband,
Non-husband,
non-wife, you know, whatever, yeah.
Right. So it became, thing 1 and thing 2 worked, and it's a surrendering to and trusting in what's happening, and without guarantees, without promises. Either, I mean, we were in the middle of COVID. Either one of us could have gotten something and died. Could have gotten hit by a bus. My best friend had a heart attack out of nowhere and died before she was 60. It's like, life is not guaranteed. It's not promised. It's the shortest and longest thing we ever know to do. And I was going to trust ultimately my soul, and my soul had reconnected me with Robin. So that's where we've been.
That's where we've been. And there was another thought that I had that I wanted to include into this. What was it? What was I wanting to include in this? Damn. Oh, right. Surrendering, the idea of surrender, in this case also, however, didn't mean that we settled for the same patterns and unhealthy dynamic, codependent dynamics that we'd had in the previous parts of our relationship. Right. Being authentic and genuine, and sticking with being really clear about how we establish our boundaries, both permeable, semi-permeable, and non-permeable boundaries. Sorry, I was getting a phone call, so I need to make sure I shut it off so it didn't interrupt with things. Was also really important. In other words, if you're listening to our story and saying, well, I need to get back together with my soulmate because, we have more authentic, genuine exploration to do. And
it's not a formula.
And it's not a formula. And it's also not about taking abuse or taking manipulation. Right. It's about being really clear that I'm going to speak my truth about me. I'm going to offer you what you need to know about how your behaviors might be affecting me. It's about listening to how my behaviors affect Dina. And we went through our abusive stage. Yep. We did. And it was awful. We both yelled and screamed at each other. It was verbally abusive. Yes, but it was awful.
This was not a
It was not
Johnny
healthy.
Depp.
Yeah. It was we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there. And so, when we're talking about reconnection and re-engagement, we're talking about taking it really slow, slowing all of our conversations, especially when we start feeling triggered, way down.
Being present
to the point where we're saying, hold on, I need to pause it right here. Yeah. And it's hard. I need to pause it here because I'm triggered and I need to explore what this is about. Because I don't want to take it out on you. I don't want to suppress it.
And it's never you triggered me. When triggered, the other person didn't do it. They simply stepped on something already festering within us. The pain was already alive in us, just subconscious. So when they stepped on it by doing or saying something similar to whatever the original wound was, they didn't make us feel this. The feeling was there. It just came up into our awareness. And when that happens, it's an invitation for healing. Not how dare you do this to me, but I'm triggered. This is my feeling. There's something here for me to look at. I'm going to go get alone now, quiet now, or can we just take a moment because I need you present with what's coming up for me.
Right.
And then revisit whatever is happening in the present moment, which may or may not need addressing after feeling whatever we need to feel.
Right. And it's also an acknowledgement of saying, of exploring your personal feelings first, your personal trigger, and where that trauma might or might not be. And also being able to be clear about what we believe about what another person is communicating, because we can believe somebody is being gaslighting, and it may not be that way. But we have to honor our feelings we have to communicate what we believe, and we have to allow the space for somebody else to clarify and
Yeah.
communicate backwards to us
Yeah.
or back to us what the intentions were.
A really good phrase for me that I don't use often enough, so I'm just going to put it on the record here that it's a good one to use, is to say, the story I'm telling myself is this. I've done that a few times
Yes.
with you, where I can get my intuitive hunches confused with my fear-based conditioning. They can feel, seem, sound the same when they come up. So one of the things I like to say is, the story I've been telling I'm feeling anxious, and the story I've been telling myself is, and then tell it to him, which is a vulnerable thing to do, because sometimes these things are, like, let me announce my insecurities.
Right.
And then ask him, is there any truth to any of this? And to take the risk of, is he going to react self-defensively? Is he going to feel shame? Is he going to be like, oh God,
maybe.
Maybe, and then that's his thing. Like, there's all these levels of vulnerability involved here, and being really honest about what you're feeling, what you're sensing, owning it, owning the story, and then daring to ask, is there any truth to it? And being willing to hear, because maybe there is. Maybe there is some truth to that. And we're still learning all these things, but I will say this. We've had a few of what felt like, if not conflicts, at least challenges leading toward conflicts.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. And we've had long discussions about them. And there were moments when it started to feel like, oh no, we're going back to that, the unresolved conflict stage. But we have so far stayed present and cared enough about resolving, rather than letting it being something that builds up, that we have worked through all of them, even if we have to say, I still love you, I'm not going anywhere, but I want to sleep on this, you know, that kind of a thing. Safe distance without
safe distance,
reactionary.
sacred space.
Yeah.
And
honoring each other.
Yeah. And I think there's one thing I would like to point out here before we probably wrap this one up.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and use this as my wrap up on my end,
okay,
and give you the opportunity to wrap up on yours.
Gotcha.
Okay. And then you'll get part 3 later.
Oh my gosh.
Right? We're doing a whole series here on our relationship. So there's going to be a part 3, maybe more.
Somebody cares out there. Is anyone
hey,
going to watch
this is good
these?
stuff. This is good stuff. This is really good stuff. So there are many tools, many phrases that we've used throughout these last 8.5 years. One of the ones that we started playing with reasonably early on is this idea of meeting each other in the middle.
On the bridge.
Or in the Gottman language, meet me on the bridge. And this again is a concept that goes is cross-cultural, cross theology, cross philosophy. It runs the gamut of an ideal which is expressed, universally, at least within the human world. But a lot of people misinterpret it as saying, meet me halfway. You give 50% and I'll give 50%. So that's not what it's about. Meet me in the middle is just like anything else that comes on a spectrum. There is, when you have a spectrum, you have a line which provides an access to a veritable spectrum of positions upon this line between two extremes, between you and me, between her and I. Sometimes meeting me in the middle means we meet halfway. We both give not 50%, but 100% to meet in the middle, right in between. That is, generally speaking, what we like to think is the epitome of compromise. I'm not sure that it is. I would like to challenge that belief, where the epitome of compromise really is actually taking responsibility for 100% of the spectrum from you to the other side, and the other side taking 100% of the responsibility of the spectrum from their side to yours. I think that's actually really true compromise.
Giving it your all.
Giving it your all. But what meeting me in the middle does at the very least mean is it means that sometimes I'm going to be able to give 1%. And that's it. Maybe even 0%. And somebody else, Dina, for instance, in this case, is going to come all the way the fuck over to my side and say, it's okay, I'm here because I know you can't come any further right now. But I'm going to be here with you while you're here. No blame, no shame, just understanding, compassion, empathy, and yeah, I'm here with you. Sometimes it means I make that exact same journey over to her side. And I say, I'm here with you. I've met you where you are. And that's what meeting in the middle really is. It's I'm willing to meet you where you are. And you're willing to meet me where I am. And sometimes we're going to come this far away from meeting each other. Sometimes we're going to meet each other here. Sometimes I'll be over here. Sometimes I'll be over there. That's what meeting in the middle really is.
We can always throw paper airplanes across the abyss.
Yes, we'll throw paper airplanes at each other until we make the connection. Yes. So I think that's my wrap up for the day. If there's one thing I would like to convey about this, that's a really important concept. Meeting in the middle is not halfway. Meeting in the middle is an agreement to do everything you can to meet somebody where they are on that spectrum.
Nicely said. And I got, lovely mandorla imagery.
Right. Mandorla, Venn diagrams, yes, all those neat things.
I guess what I would like to say to wrap up part 2 of probably a 3-parter, is that I know now we had to break up. At the time it happened, it was devastating. It felt like a failure. It felt like, what the hell, universe? This is not what I intended. None of that. And it was perplexing and confusing and bewildering because the bond that I feel with this man is significant, and I didn't know what to do with that. So it felt like a violation on a certain belief level, experience level. But we had to break up. And we had to get alone, we had to get separate, we had to get personally responsible with our own stuff. And we couldn't do that while my pain was eclipsing his pain, and I couldn't hear him, and he felt disconnected, and he was reaching out to others for validation that he wanted to get from me, but I didn't know I wasn't giving. I mean, we had to wipe the slate clean and both believe that we really were done and moving on. So, when things get tough in a relationship, and they will get tough in every relationship, provided you went anywhere below the shallow level. If you stay in that shiny Disneyland new relationship energy and bounce from person to person to person on that state, then you got a relationship addiction, and that's a different topic. But I would encourage anyone who's going through the shit got real after the honeymoon stage, don't give up yet. Get some help. Maybe from more than one person. Whether it's therapy, counseling of some kind, a mediator, someone who can help you look more objectively at what's happening. And if it needs to end, at least you'll have the clarity of knowing you did all you could. You didn't abandon it too quickly. And don't necessarily give up that when it's over, it's over. I guess my big pitch here is trust your soul. Get to know the you, capital S self, that's in there, always in you. That's our place of foundation, and that's the place from which we can deeply relate. I guess that's what it feels like now.
Yeah, and the only way you can do that is to really, really engage with your shadow.
We were relating lower S selves before, and now we're relating upper S selves, and yes, the vehicle to get there is through the shadow. And the exciting thing about shadow work is it's never done, which means I'll never be bored. Yep, never be bored, because boredom and beige are the roots of all evil. That's what I want to leave it with.
All right. Well, here's to boredom, beige, and meeting each other in the middle. We love you guys,
all three of you who are watching
yeah,
all three of you.
I think there are more than that, but I hope that you're gaining something out of our ability to talk about our relationship. There is a lot of stuff here that we're skipping over, and I'm sure that as we do move videos, and part 3, we'll cover much more.
Well, we're getting a lot out of it.
Yeah, we're getting a lot out of it, so screw you guys. Anyway, so stay tuned for part 3. We'll probably produce it today, and also offer it today, because why not? And we're gonna like take a break and get some breakfast, nourish ourselves, both our souls and our bodies.
Oh, that's right. We didn't eat yet.
We have not eaten yet, and we're running on over 1 hour 10 minutes. So have a great afternoon, and we'll be back.
See you soon.
Bye. See you later.